So I want to officially welcome you to the last in our series, You Can Do It Online, brought to you by Speakout in Miami. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. And for those of you who have been consistently coming, I'm really glad to see you all again. And by the time we're done today, you're going to have a whole different way of looking at the people in your world. I'm going to ask you if you like what you've been experiencing over the last 4 weeks to please let me know. Text me, call me. Please connect with us on LinkedIn. Please post on LinkedIn that you liked the series or on our Facebook page. And we'd love to hear back from you, what you've learned, what you found of value. And of course, if you find what we're doing, please recommend our coaching and training programs to your clients and your friends. So today's topic is called Online Persuasion: How to Influence the Different Personality Types in Your business and in your nonprofit world, with a special emphasis of doing that online. I'm Ann Friedman, the president and founder of Speakout. I'm the author of Public Speaking for the Genius and a collection of ebooks. And I've been doing this coaching for almost 30 years. And it's my pleasure again to have all of you here today. So I'm going to begin with a few questions for you to be thinking about. Who's in your audience or on the team that you're working with? And have you ever noticed that sometimes you've made a presentation or you've given a report or even had a critical conversation and it just didn't go the way you wanted? And you've wondered why. When you had the exact same conversation with somebody else, it worked perfectly. But with this other person or this other group, you didn't get the outcome you expected. So wouldn't it be wonderful if you could influence more people more successfully, more often? Well, that's part of the goal of today. And by the time you leave today, you're going to understand a little bit more about yourself and your own style of communicating. You're going to have a better handle on reading other people and seeing what it is that they want and need in a conversation or from a presentation. I'll get some feedback from all of you on what we've covered, and then I'm going to share with you some very clear-cut tactics of what you need to say and how you need to approach each of the 4 different personality types, whether you're doing this individually or in a group, to get more of the outcome that you deserve after all that hard work you do to put together your presentation or your report. This system, which is called DISC, was actually originated by a man named William Moulton Marston in the 1920s. He was an industrial psychologist. He happened to invent the lie detector. He was also the creator of Wonder Woman, the cartoon, but he was also the one who devised the science behind these 4 personality types. So part of the question is, can you tell what other people are thinking? If I could make the sound effect of a the answer is no, because unless you could drill a hole in somebody's head, we really have no idea what somebody else is thinking, do we? So the same question is, can you tell what other people are feeling? And the reality is we cannot really tell what other people are feeling. But by looking at observable behavior, we get a clue, we get a set of clues on what people are thinking and what they're feeling that can put us in a better position to react with wisdom, with clarity, and with more accuracy in what we're saying and how we're saying it. Now, there are 4 different behavioral styles and insights. And think about, as I do this, the people that you know and who you are. Some people will ask you to do something, right? But there are other people who don't ask. They just tell. And I remember frustrating my late husband because I would be barking out orders all day long. And I would say, honey, the garbage needs to be taken out. And he would say to me, why don't you ask me? And I said, I just did. So some of us don't even realize we're telling people, and other people ask. So that's part of the foundation. And then we have two other types of behavior. There's some people like me, I talk with my hands, I'm very expressive, and there are other people that are very close to the chest and you really can't read anything on their face. So these are the first of the 4 sets of characteristics that you want to be looking for as you form your comments and your ideas. And they have been grouped into categories, which I'll be going deeper into in just a moment. Some of us are task-focused, we're thinking all the time. Some of us are feeling, and it's all about other people. Some of us are extroverted and more active, and we like to be center stage. And some of us are more introverted and passive, and we'll let the world take over. Who are you dealing with? Who's on your team? Who are your clients? Who's in your family? Who is in the nonprofit world that you're trying to expand? These are relevant in all of those situations. DISC is the language of people watching. It helps us measure observable behavior and emotions. It's the how of your life, and it influences every conversation that you have. It's not good or cool to be one sign or another, although some people think it is. Just remember that. So now we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into who you are, who's on your team, and who's in your audience. And I'm going to introduce you to the 4 basic personality types. I used to have people attached to these types, but then it became rather politically incorrect to do that. So I changed them to animals. And if any of you are animal lovers, please don't be offended by the choice of animals that I've assigned to these characteristics. Okay, so as I do this, I want you to be thinking about yourself and the people in your circles. So the D is the direct, it's also known as the dominant. These are the people, the men and the women who think they are, believe they are kings or queens in their world. They're always right, they want the big picture. If you give them detail, they're just going to cloud up in front of you. They tend to be bossy. They love to solve problems. Does that sound like you? Does that sound like someone you're working with or a prospect you're trying to reach? Now, I'm going to encourage you, I can't hear you do this, but there are 2 different characteristics, 2 different kinds of conversations. So if someone is high in this characteristic, would you say out loud what you see on the screen on the left, and I'll do it with you. They're likely to say, let's just go for it. But if they're low in this characteristic, you might hear them saying, well, we need to examine the situation first before we go charging in. Right away, these are clues of who you're dealing with. If somebody makes decisions fast, or if they're slower doing it, these are outright obvious clues. The next communication style is called the influencer. These are often thought of as the salesy type, the person who's at a cocktail party and meets everybody before the evening's over. And they need lots of praise and recognition. Oh, you look fabulous, darling. That's such a good color on you. And you did such a great job on that project. They are also big picture focused, like the directs. They love to get people excited about things, and they're very enthusiastic when they're excited about something themselves. Does that sound like you? Is that who you're working with? Now, they tend to say things like what you're going to see on the left. Our business is going to explode in the next few years. I can feel it. But if they're low in this characteristic, they're likely to say, it's nice, Anne, but can you show me the facts to back it up? You see how different that is? Again, who are you and who are you dealing with? The third type of personality is called the steady. And this is the person who doesn't like change very much. My daughter is a steady. Yet they're the people that can hold an organization together. Interestingly, The CEOs of the most successful companies tend to be steadies because they bring aboard risk takers and people that are even more conservative than they are, and they know how to work with everyone. They're really good at building relationships, but they can resist change. So if you're bringing in a whole brand new idea, a whole new way of doing something, you've got to approach these folks differently, don't you, than the others. They say things like, great idea, let's form a team and make sure we put together a detailed plan of action. But if they're low in this characteristic, they're more likely to say, we don't have time now, let's move out and we can plan as we go. Is this you? Is this someone that you're approaching? Is this someone you're going to be having a meeting with? And the final of the 4 types is what we call the checklister or the compliant. These are the anal retentives. They love rules, they love procedures. You need to give it to them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When I meet with my accountant Marvin, who's a dear friend, and I go to him with this big idea of something I'm considering, he'll say, wait, Ian, just give it to me 1, 2, 3, 4, which is not the way I normally approach things. And if you don't come with enough detail, they're going to think you're incompetent and unprofessional. They say things like, we have procedures and rules that are meant to be followed. On the other hand, if someone is low in this characteristic, they're likely to say, well, they're just guidelines. By the way, do you have a copy? I've never seen them. I know I used to drive people a little nuts when I was president of the National Association of Women Business Owners. We had one of our members, a lovely woman who was a total C. In every meeting, she would bring the bylaws up. And I felt like it was interfering with the progress of what we were doing. And from her point of view, if it wasn't done according to Hoyle, according to the bylaws, it wasn't right. So we need a certain amount of each of these in any team, right, to be effective. But when you're presenting, it's really critical to tune in who's in front of you and how do you need to shift your focus to connect better. So here's a quick recap. The D, the direct, is extroverted and task-oriented. The influencer is also extroverted, but they are more people-oriented. The steady is introverted and people-focused, and the checklister is introverted and more task-focused. So again, I want you to think about who are you dealing with and how might you need to change what you're doing. So let's look at how you figure out who's in front of you. And there are 4 factors. One is their speaking voice. Is it loud? Is it soft? How fast or how slowly do they speak? What kind of words do they use? And what hints can you get from the body language? So let's look at the D first, the director. And they tend to speak fast, and they tend to go right to the results. You hear a strong, clear, confident, direct voice coming from them, generally speaking. Now, this doesn't mean that a checklister or a steady can't also come across like a direct sometimes. But usually that's more of an act. That's not really who they are. See the words that are on the screen here: win, results, lead, fast, challenge, bottom line, immediate, now, today. When you use that kind of language with a direct, you're going to move the process along faster and in the direction you want. Each of these styles has different words that are important to them. And finally, what about the body language? Somebody looks you straight in the eye, gives you a strong handshake. Well, today, nobody's shaking hands. And through a mask, it's very different. So you're going to need to listen to the voice. You're going to see how close they get to you. Things are changing a little bit, but the idea of being very direct in all of their behavior is still a really good set of clues for you. So I want you to write down right now 1 or 2 contacts or team members or prospects that you recognize as a director. And maybe you yourself are this particular type. So go ahead and just take a second and do that. And I'm going to be asking you all a little bit to share in a few minutes. Okay, now let's look at the influencer. The influencer comes across as high energy, enthusiastic, persuasive, friendly. They're the one, as I said earlier, who meets everybody at a networker. They're the ones who everyone wants to socialize with because they make you feel good. They tend to speak fast, and they're very animated when they speak. And here are the words they like. They love fun. I feel it's exciting. They get lots of, picture this. Tons of people think this is a cool idea. Now, that may be a little exaggerated, but not much. So if you hear people using these kinds of words, or you're using them, those are clues that you may be involved with an influencer, or you yourself might be one. And they tend to be touchy-feely. Again, things are changing now. People cannot touch the way they used to. They smile, they're very expressive. So they're probably using their hands a whole lot more than they did because you can't see their face if they're wearing a mask. Now on camera, obviously this is not an issue. On camera, you can look for these kinds of smiles and expressions and uses of hands and voice and get clues during that online meeting of who are you addressing and how do you need to shift to better communicate and to better have the impact that you're looking for. Now, I want you to take a second and write down the names of 1 or 2 contacts or team members or prospects or people in the community that you're going after, perhaps for a contribution. Who is an influencer? And are you an influencer? Okay. Now, the study, generally speaking, is obvious because their tone of voice is warmer, softer, calmer. They tend to not speak as loudly as the direct and the influencers do. Their approach is a little bit more thoughtful and relaxed. And here are the words that they tend to use. Well, let's think about it. Take your time. Don't rush into it. Let me help you, or help me. Let's take this step by step. Trust me, guaranteed. I promise this is going to work. Are you sure about this? They want security. If you or the people you're talking to or the person you're talking to uses these kinds of words, again, these are clues that you're probably dealing with someone who's tradition-minded, steady, doesn't like change. And again, the body clues are they tend to appear to be relaxed and calm. They don't use their hands all over the place. They don't rush. They don't get too close to you. So take a second and think about who in your family, perhaps, who among your friends, who in your business circles, who's a steady, or who's someone that you're trying to sell or convince or get to go along with the new idea you have. Okay, the last of the 4 is the checklister. And they tend to be very precise, controlled. There's not much modulation in their voice. They're very thoughtful, like a steady. Sometimes it's hard to tell a steady from a checklister. They tend to be slower in their reactions to things and very thoughtful. So they're analyzing almost every word you're saying as you're saying it. And they're looking for holes. They're looking for, well, she didn't talk about this. She didn't talk about that. Does she really know what she's doing? Does he really have a handle on things? Here are some of the words that a checklister wants to hear. This is a proven methodology. We have guarantees. Here are the facts. The data shows this. Here's the support. There's no risk. Take your time, think it over, analyze. See how different this is than the other 3 types? And in a way similar to the direct, the checklist is going to look you in the eye also. Like they're not going to use their body very much. They absolutely will not touch you. They may sit across from you. And again, in an online meeting, it may or may not always be obvious. The tone of voice, the approach, the kind of questions are going to give you even more clues. Before I open up the mics, there are 2 other sets of characteristics to help you. The influencers and the steadies, who are people, tend to be friendly and supportive. The directs and the checklisters tend to see a problem on every corner, and their natural tendency is to be more hostile and more antagonistic, to check you out, to make sure you really know what you're talking about. And other thing to remember is that the direct and influencers see themselves in charge of the world. And the steadies and the checklisters think the world is in charge of them. So as you come into this equation as the expert that you are, how are you going to need to shift your approach to make someone who is not like you comfortable and confident that you're presenting what they need? Okay? So now I'm going to, one last step, and then I'm going to open up and ask you to share a little bit of your impressions so far. Who are you dealing with? Who do you think gives you the most trouble when you're in a meeting? Could be a meeting from a nonprofit that you're involved with, could be a team, could be prospects. But here's one last way to help identify. Someone who's a high D, and we do, so you know, there are assessments that measure these characteristics in people. We do them for our clients, and sometimes you're high or you're low in a particular characteristic. If you're especially high, it means you make decisions very quickly. If you're especially low in the D, you tend to procrastinate making decisions. If you're very high as an influencer, as an I on your chart, it means you tend to talk a lot. And if you're very low, it tends to mean you're a good listener. Because you can't talk and listen at the same time, right? Some people can do it better than others, but most people do one or they do the other, right? Then we have the steadies. And the steadies are, who are high in the steady, tend to be very stable, easygoing. But if you're a low in the steady, you love change and you're quick to change. And with the checklisters, people that are very high in the checklister characteristics tend to demand and expect facts. People that are very low are more likely to go with their intuition and their gut and not rely as much on the facts. Okay? So now I'm going to ask you, and this one last thing, another clue is conflict. Each of these four styles reacts to conflict in a different way, and this is another way for you to figure out who you are. I'm not wishing any of you conflict. That's not my point here. But if you happen to have conflict and you read it well, it's going to help you in the future. So the directs tend to demand what they want. They're over-assertive, autocratic, strong-willed. They try to make you believe what they want. And if there's hostility, they're going to vent on you. On the other hand, the influencers will attack you emotionally and they'll tell people how they feel about things and they'll condemn other people and they'll put them down. The steadies will tend to give in to almost everything to avoid a conflict. They'll tolerate even if they disagree with you because the relationship matters more than their being right or wrong. And then you have the checklisters who may keep things to themselves, seem to be more controlled. But if you can imagine a knife, they're going to come back and stab you in the back later. Okay? I'm generalizing, but this helps you think about. Okay, so now I'm going to stop the share for a moment, and I'm going to see if I can unmic you. Unmute everybody. Okay. I'm going to unmute and please, or unmute yourself. Can you unmute yourselves? Yes. Okay. And would you share with me who gives you the biggest headache? Which of these four styles has given you the biggest headache in the past?
Checklister.
Why?
I find that I'm goal oriented, and it seems like the checklisters, although I do see value to them, when they are extreme checklisters, it's when you're trying to move on a project is obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, and they only focus on what they don't agree with. So it's very hard to move a project along with a strong checklister.
Right, and we're going to talk about some strategies you can use in a few minutes, but that is for people that are not checklisters, checklisters can drive people absolutely nuts. Yes, they have real value, but how do we pivot to alter our approach to take advantage of the gifts that they do bring to the situation? Thank you. Who else would like to share who they find their biggest headache? Would you unmute yourself and share it, please?
Cornelia, there's a lot to take in. I think we almost need to have charts in front of us to kind of get this in our head. I missed the last class. You might have started attacking it then. But I consider myself a steady. And I find being with all types a challenge. And I'm a real social animal. I love organizational work. And I don't know, I always come away with, I think, being able to deal with mostly anyone. I don't know. But I think
that's a gift. That's a good thing. If you can maneuver, some of us are better maneuvering with people, and some of us are better maneuvering with tasks.
I think I'm better with people.
Okay, and that's okay. It's good. It's good.
I'm not great with tasks, I don't think. But
right. And it's okay. We need all four types in any given situation, or it doesn't work. Doesn't work. Thank you. Thank you, Cornelia. Yvonne?
I think that I'm an influencer as well as steady. I mean, anybody that knows me, I think, can agree with that. Most people ask my opinion, and they ask basically what I go to my own beat. And I don't like when people have to take an opinion poll and they can't make a decision. That's right.
So if you were dealing, so similarly to Carmen, you may find checklisters difficult to deal with.
Right.
They want all the detail before they'll even remotely consider something.
Right, but see, in my business, at least the computer business, it's they more or less listen to me. Most of them are not the ones that know what they want. So my business might be a little bit different than other people because I really don't have to convince people.
You've already pre-established your expertise. Okay, let's see. Is there anyone else who would like to unmute themselves and share? How about Juliet?
Hey, Ann.
Oh, Ellen, yes.
Ellen.
Hi, Ellen.
Yeah. So right off the bat, Carmen, the hardest one for me to deal with is definitely the checklister, you know? And it was so fun for me to put my clients and friends and family's names to each of these. And I'm definitely an influencer. And I love the scale that you gave where you can be high or low on it, because I think I'm just above midway. And that's based on that, you know, I speak very exuberantly, and I have to really work hard to just listen, right?
It's hard to talk and listen at the same time.
Yeah.
Most of us can't do it very well. So
yeah, I think I've been practicing, you know, I'm pretty close to the middle, but I'm definitely on the talking end of that stick. So that was really cool for me.
I'm glad. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to share? I saw someone else come on camera before. Mariana, was that you?
Terry's raising her hand.
Hi, Terry. Which one do you feel you find the most challenging to work with?
Well, I feel like I'm all of those. Every single thing you
Oh.
said fits me in some way, and I know I'm not alone. So as far as dealing with other people, I've had 40 years of dealing with women. I think I have it down pretty good, but you know, there's always that one that will surprise me. So yeah, I think I'm a combination, and I don't know, my feeling is maybe there are others out there who feel that they are as well.
And you can have a little bit of all the characteristics, but what I've learned with 20 odd years of using these assessments, you're going to be one or two of them. And yes, we become nimble as we learn in our profession to maneuver around other people. But my hunch is that there are people that you meet that you immediately know you're going to have to be a little
Yes.
bit more careful about how you're telling them what to do.
I'm never careful. I try to be, I guess I would say I'm direct, because I don't really have a lot of time to fool around,
Right,
you know,
so-
especially with what I do, you know. This
And
is
so-
it, and this is the way it is. If you want my service, and I know it might sound a little bitchy, excuse my language. However, I provide a service that at this point in my life, I'm well known for. So when you want to tell me about someone who does something else, Bobby Brown, Estee Lauder, the Mac counter, well, you know what I say, you should go there then. If you want my opinion, then you have to listen to what Terry Jacobs says. So yes, I guess I'm bossy and directive.
It's okay. And it's good for us to understand who we are. And that helps us with our relationships with others, because sometimes we got to tone ourselves down. Yes, Ellen, other Ellen.
I have a question about these. When are these developed in humans? Like, is this something that's innate? Because I was looking at these things and I was looking into my family, and you know, I see these characteristics in my kids and their teenagers, and I'm wondering, will that change? Does it change over time?
And it's a really good question. There is another instrument we do, which is called driving forces. Those are your values. Like, do you care about power or money or relationships? Those are formed when you're younger, and they're less likely to change as you get older. Your values that you grow up with pretty much stay with you most of your life, but your behavior can change, Ellen, to your point. Some of it is more innate, but some of it does change. For example, I was an introvert growing up, and I became a journalist, as I had shared in the early, and you had to go out and ask people questions, and you had to network, and so I kind of got out of my shell, and now I'm more of an extrovert. So you can change. Sometimes it has to be conscious. Sometimes life forces us into situations.
Experience.
We have to act, not who we really are. And in these instruments, they show a natural style and what's called an adapted style. So over the years, women in particular have had to develop an adapted style, especially in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
Very strong and assertive. It was not always well received in the workplace. We had to tone ourselves down. Or some people that were not naturally salesy had to act like they thought this is the best thing since chocolate bread was invented, even though that's not who they really are. Musicians have to come across with stage presence, even though they may be introverts. So it's a very good question. You're not locked into a behavior unless you choose to be there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy
I
to
wanted
change.
to add
Yeah.
that if you take the assessment, you could change depending on when you take it.
Absolutely, you could, Mary Lou. You absolutely could.
I've taken it and been more I, other times more S, and other times more D. Now, if I compare it to, say, a Myers-Briggs, I'm borderline introvert extrovert. So I could see how I'd have the I, but also the S. And I too, as a child, was very introverted. And only my career has sort of brought me out and kind of forced me. So if I teach, I feel very empowered to teach people. But in terms of selling you on something, I have a rough time with that. I can sell something else or someone else, but selling myself is a little bit tougher.
And that's a part that, thank you so much for sharing that. And that is true. And sometimes the results are very sobering. I remember the first time I did it, which was like 25 years ago, I was a D. I never saw myself that way. I said, what? You know, everyone else did, but I thought it was an I, or I don't know what I thought I was, but I was horrified. Oh my God, you know, oh, these strong men in my family are Ds. How could I possibly be a D? You know, it's not, but anyway, but we get over it and we do change, to your point. And the assessments are reliable to a point.
Mm-hmm.
And then we do change, which is why you want to do them every couple of years so that you have a better handle on if you have changed. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. Okay, does anybody else want to comment? Because I'm going to go forward now. All right, let me go back to share the screen. Thank you all. Go back into the presentation. Can you see it? Can everyone see? Yes? Okay. So now we're going to go into how do you, hang on. Oh, come on. Not moving. 1 second. Okay. How do you deal with these types? Okay, so let's talk about the direct. Think about the directs that you know that you have challenges with, and what they care most about, ladies and gentlemen, is time. If you can show the direct that your idea, your product, your service, your nonprofit, whatever it is you're trying to convince me to do will save me time, right away you have my attention. You need to prepare your presentation specifically answering the what questions. What's it going to cost? What's going to take? What's the next step? What's involved? And then this is the most important part of dealing with the king or the queen, the direct. Please repeat after me. I won't be able to hear you, but please repeat after me. Never, never, never. Say it out loud.
Never, never, never.
Never. One more time. Never, never, never.
Never, never, never.
Tell a direct what to do. Always present options or probabilities. Well, Ms. D or Mr. D, you could have plan A, which gives you this and this and this and this and this. Or you could have plan B, which does this and this and this and this and will save you time. Or you can choose between the blue line and the orange line. The blue line has this and the orange line has this. Which one do you think is better? Now, if the D asks you for your opinion, please remember to bite your tongue in 5 places. Keep your mouth shut, because they will take exactly the opposite of whatever you've recommended, because they can. Okay, so what you want to remember is, well, they're both good. You really are the best to decide what's best for you, and back off. Now, as you're going to see, it's different for each of the other styles. And what's also important to remember, ladies and gentlemen, is if you have an audience, if you have a group, you're going to have all 4 types in your audience, are you not? So in your close, in your approach, you're going to need to weave in all of these approaches, especially with a group, if you want to get what you want at the end. Okay, let's look at the influence. A few more things. The D, as a real quick recap, they make quick decisions. They're not afraid to take unpopular decisions, and they'll take risks. So as Terry was sharing, she'll tell people what she thinks they need. And if they need it, oh well, because she's the expert and she has the confidence in herself and her expertise to do that. Not everybody does, and not everybody takes it well. The person who is low in D isn't necessarily someone who needs to be center stage, and they can make a good team player. Okay, these are the words, I showed you some of these before, that you want to use when you're dealing with a D. Bottom line, results, now, today. Okay, now let's look at the influencer. Now, I'm not going to say that the influencer is a lazy person, because that wouldn't be very kind or fair. But the influencer likes to have fun and play. So if you can show the influencer that this isn't that much work for you to do, they're going to say, oh, I can do this. And it's really important that you name drop with an influencer. When I get a call from a prospective client, and within a sentence or two, they're asking me, well, who else have you worked with, Anne? I know it's an influencer. They want me to impress them with the names of clients I've had. The other styles don't ask. And then they want testimonials and incentives to do business with you, to listen to you, to talk to you. How can you sweeten the pot with these folks so that they will listen and will give you the results you're expecting? The high I needs to and loves to make other people feel welcomed and included. They have this wonderful optimism for life, and they tend to be pretty trusting, which seems to be contradictory, but they do. Someone who's lower in I is going to be able to observe detail better, and they're more willing to listen to other people's ideas, because as we said, the I's are very talkative and outgoing, and it's hard to talk and listen at the same time, isn't it? Okay. These are the words that you want to use with the I. You want to reinforce the fact that there's a feeling connected with it. There's some exciting outcome that they can look forward. This will add to their recognition. You want to help them envision whatever you're proposing in their world. Now, the steady is completely different from the direct and from the influencer, because what they care most about is relationships. And when you come excited, charging in with some change that you're proposing, you are threatening their relationships with their staff, with their vendors, with their family, with themselves. And they are like the perpetual 2-year-old. My granddaughter is 2 now. And why? You need to answer the why questions. Why is this change really important? Why is it going to be beneficial to the company? Why is it going to be beneficial to them as a person? Why do they need to go through the change? And you want to spell out clearly guarantees and assurances that you didn't need to spell out for the direct or the influencer, if you want the steady to come around to what you're asking for. The steady has a natural ability to organize tasks and order, and they tend to have good record-keeping skills, but not every steady does. But they tend to have this. My daughter, Lynn, is a professional organizer. She is totally the opposite of me. I'm great with ideas, but with things and tasks, no. Okay? But if they're low in an S, they're more likely to be willing to initiate change, and they have more flexibility, and they're not immediately pigeonholing their solutions one way or another, okay? And then we have the words that the S needs to hear from you. Think about it, take your time, help you out, help me out. Let's do this in a logical, step-by-step way. Trust me. When you use those kinds of words with a steady, you're more likely to get what you're looking for. Finally, we have the checklister. How do you persuade a checklister? The most important thing for a checklister, and the reason that they tend to resist Carmen, they resist you, and I think Ellen also brought this up, was because they need to be right all the time. They need to save face. So you've got to convince them that what you're recommending is going to make them here to be an expert, knowledgeable, right, that they're on the right path. They want answers to exactly how it's going to work, how long it's going to take, how many steps are involved. And they want proof and evidence and good customer service from you, especially if you're asking for change. The high C is going to be a good detective for you. They're going to dig for information. They're really good at looking at systems and developing them. And they get insulted if you think their system isn't working, even if it isn't. And they tend to be good quality control people. On the other hand, if they're very low in C, like I am, we tend to write our own rules and we tend to get past obstacles. We're really creative at figuring out solutions to things. That can work, and sometimes it doesn't work as well. So these are, and the last thing, the C's want words like proven, guarantees, here are the facts, give me the supporting data, there's no risk in this, it's proven, think it over, analyze. So when you use those kinds of words with a checklister, again, you're going to be more likely to get what you want from your interaction, from your meeting. Here's one other reminder. If you're putting together a presentation, make sure that you weave in something for each of these 4 styles in your presentation. It could be a story that cuts across all 4. Make sure if in point 1, you address the dominant and the influencer, and point 2, you bring up something that the study is going to find reassuring. For example, if in your first point you give me a big overview, then you're going to share how much fun this is going to be, how exciting it's going to be. Then you reassure the study that you're building in these plans to maintain relationships. And finally, you had enough detail for the checklister to be satisfied that you know what you're talking about. This is why it's really hard work to do a good job to put a persuasive presentation together. I'm not saying it's easy, but I am saying when you start to add this to your bag of tricks, you will be pleasantly surprised at how much more effective you're going to be when you take the time and energy to think about the 4 personality types and who you are when you're putting a presentation together. So now you're on track to more successfully persuade others. And before I open up for questions, I just want to share a couple of things that may be helpful to you. We have been launching our Speakout online coaching groups, and I wanted you to know that we have spaces for you. These are going to be either 4 sessions or 8 sessions, and will help you develop a 2-minute video or a short presentation on your expertise that you can use for social media. You can send it to clients, and we'll have no more than 6 people in a session, 4 minimum. And if you'd like to talk to me about it, I'd be happy to send you information and talk with you if this is something that would be useful for you. And also, I wanted to show you, I'm going to stop share for a moment, what some of our ebooks look like on the inside. And I have one that goes along with today's talk. So let me just show it to you. 1 second. There it is. Okay. This is an interactive ebook on how to influence personalities every day. We've been covering this in today's session. And 1 second. And I just wanted you to see that it has the 4 types, but it also gives you room in the ebook to write in your thoughts. You see down here, you can write in, I think, oops, I can't write on the screen, but it is fillable, and you can use it to talk about, you can write in anything you want to all the way through it. And it has all the characteristics, and all of our ebooks are like that. See where the blue lines are? You can fill in along the way. And in the rest of the presentation kit, all of the ebooks are like this. So there's more information than I could cover here today, but I wanted you to see what's in an ebook, because I hadn't done that before. And we have a collection of 4. So I'm going to stop share. So including the one that you just saw, we have a special offer for $39.95. It includes how to get started to reach that yes, and a video called How to Overcome Your Fear and Loathing of Public Speaking, How to Organize Your Content. And this one that you just saw is How to Influence Different Types, How to Open Strong, which we did in the first workshop. If you're in the coaching group, you're going to get this set. And if you're not interested in the coaching group, this set is only $39.95 and it's available on our website. So I want to wrap up. I'm going to open up for questions, and thank you again for joining us for the last 5 weeks. It's been wonderful to have you on board, and I'm going to ask